Sanbonani Dumilang, good evening and welcome to episode 235 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Uzamantungwa Kumalo. It's a Thursday edition of the Private Property Podcast, and as we do welcome to all our new viewers, if you're joining us for the first time, well, you've missed out on a number of great episodes. So do make sure that you go to our Facebook as well as our YouTube page to catch up on all the great content that you have already missed. The viewers, welcome to the show. We know how to do it every single weekday at 7 p.m. We have an appointment. We tackle a hot property issue that helps us make the best decisions to navigate our property journey. And that's precisely what we will be doing this evening as we look at the value of valuation. I know that this is one of those things that we like to talk about, and there's still so many of us who don't quite understand what goes into an evaluation, why it's so important to do an evaluation, and if you're even a buyer, perhaps insist on evaluation being done before you buy, especially a freestanding property. Well, those are some of the things that we're going to be looking at this evening. And of course, what we always do, we are wrapping up the last week of our Sherlock Holmes competition. And if you still don't know about this one, we have been running a Sherlock Holmes hunt on our social media pages and our website for the past 12 weeks. Now, every single week on Monday, we shared a unique riddle that we wanted you to crack and let us know where it leads you. And if you correctly guessed the riddle and where it leads you, then you get a chance of walking away with the 5,000 Rand voucher every single Friday. Now, because we love making the winner's circle bigger and bigger, we, up to the things just a little bit, where every Wednesday and Thursday we give away 500 Rand in cash to one lucky viewer at home. And all you have to do to claim that 500 Rand is to be watching us live so you can claim the money. Now, of course, for the clue for week 12, it is the last week. If you haven't entered this competition, I certainly do urge you to enter the competition. The clue for week 12, I think if I had to give it a try, I'd probably be able to find exactly where this is. And the clue for week 12 for our Sherlock Holmes competition is Lalusha's home, this little gem. Pet-friendly and perfect for a summer splash. 4 beds and 4 baths for less than 4 mil. Get ready to see it from all angles. And if you think you know where this riddle leads you, then do go to our website on www.privateproperty.co.za and enter the competition. As it is the last week, you know that we're also going to be raising the stakes. We've been talking quite a bit about that grand prize. Well, the grand prize is a 30,000 Rand voucher. So on Friday, there's going to be quite a number of giveaways. So certainly do look forward to tomorrow evening's episode as we give away not just a 5,000 Rand weekly voucher, but also the 30,000 Rand grand prize. Well, I'm going to start with our guest this evening, and I want to first apologize. I know there's a little bit of noise in the background. I think that you'll still be able to hear him quite clearly as we're looking at the value of evaluation in 2021. This evening, I'm joined by Kgoshi, Sasa, the CEO of Mogalakwena Valuers. Kgoshi, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Zama. Nice to be here.
It's always such a great pleasure to have you with us, Kgoshi. I think let's get right into it. I think valuations, we've spoken about it before, and it's one of those things I keep saying we're going to speak about it because increasingly more and more of us are, getting a sense of what it is, but we're still a bit undecided about, when would we even seek out a valuation? Who would insist on a valuation? For example, if a property is being sold, if you're a current homeowner, would you, seek out a valuation? But I think before we get to that and the value of actually having an evaluation done, perhaps take us through what goes with having a valuation done. What exactly do valuers ultimately value, and what goes into an evaluation report that a client would receive at the end of that valuation?
Let me try and answer your question on by using, say, 4 types of consumers of property valuation reports. Say, for instance, a developer, a buyer, a financier being a bank, and government as well. So I'll start by giving an example of what would go into evaluation if you're doing it for a developer, for instance. And I'll give you a lot of examples just so we get the conversation as clear as possible to the viewers. One, there was evaluation done for the Johannesburg Property Company in Newtown in Johannesburg. What happened there was there's a piece of land in Newtown where a valuer was tasked to go determine the value of the land. Through the valuation report that the guy put together, we were then able to identify that the highest and best use of the land is actually commercial as a retail development. The Newtown shopping mall that some of us would know, just off the double-deck section of the freeway there in Newtown. That thing came about from a valuation report. Someone went out there, did evaluation and said, guys, you're actually sitting on a gem here. You can actually build yourself a very valuable piece of real estate. That's how the valuer added the value. Hence me initially saying, if we are having this topic now, we need to be mindful that there is not much value that you can put in evaluation. I always argue and say it's priceless. My reason being, you can imagine that case, the guy was probably paid what, 5,000-7,000 for the valuation report, but now he was able to identify highest and best use on a development worth over a good 200 million by now, I would imagine. Now, that's for the developer. If we're doing evaluation for the buyer, for instance, let's say a normal residential house, the valuation report will incorporate various factors in it. There will be a condition assessment that we do as well as part of the report. We also do a locational assessment as well to advise you about the location, to say you are buying in a good location or you are buying in a poor location. Think about what you want to do. Are you sure you want to buy here, or go ahead and buy? Like, for instance, there's an example of the Ogni mine in the Northwest. Banks decided not to lend anymore there because most buyers were not aware that the mines are closing. So through a valuer going out and conducting an evaluation report, they then came out with the facts that, look, much as you are likely to get yourself a very nice, comfortable home here, 4 bedrooms, 3 en suite and all, but you are going to be left alone here. Are you sure you want to buy here? So we flagged that out to the buyer and also to the financier, being the bank. So the banks now came out and said, no, much as we know there are nice houses that were built in Ogni, but we are not going to go ahead and finance there. So safe to say, to answer you directly, the different components that goes into evaluation report depends on who we are reporting to, although there will be those standardized things that we put into evaluation report, like what do we loosely as valuers call contents of evaluation report, like the title deeds information will be there, the zoning information will be there, the municipal information will be there, like the municipal value. There will be economic commentary as well, where we tell you about the different micro and microeconomic factors within the area where you are. That will be the micro, and micro nationally, like the COVID, what is the effect of that on property values. And over and above that, now there will be now the issue of us coming up with the comparability of your property to the neighboring properties, where you're talking about, be it if it's residential, what has been sold in the area, what do you need to be mindful of? Is your property comparable? Is it overcapitalized? Are you losing value? You could do more and stuff like those, until we then conclude on the improvements and the value of the land that combined comes up with the value of the property. So it will differ depending on the type of project that in question, really.
You know, Kgoshi, I think one of the things I actually want us to talk about, and we haven't explored this on the show before, we are seeing quite a big rise of, I'll call it, you know, your township back rooms, or I'll call it townhouses or bachelor apartments that are being built, Ekasi, by various, I'll say, entrepreneurial you know, investors who sometimes either already owned that particular property, perhaps it was the family home. Some of them go out and buy, and then they will build, you know, your double-story, you know, properties. And I know one of the things that I, you know, picked up, especially in the past year during COVID, there've been certain instances where some of those properties, for example, are for sale. And obviously the relative price point for it wouldn't be the same as if you were just buying, I'll say, an ordinary house in a township. When we look at people who are looking to do those kinds of, let's call it, small developments in townships, how important is, you know, making sure that an evaluation is done for them? Because I mean, I know what goes into evaluation. I've read some reports, and as you are, you know, so greatly pointing out to us, that you're able to get great insight that helps you in terms of what you can potentially develop in a specific area. But when we then look at the, you know, the township property market, how important then is it for us to still do valuations that inform the kinds of, we'll call it, townhouse or small developments that some investors opt to do?
You know what? There are cases where, like in, I'll give an example of one that we did in Soweto and one in Tembisa in the East End. What tends to happen is that guys, let's take one where one is developing a family home and converting it into a rental stock and putting up a double-story development there. Most of the time, you as the buyer, you wouldn't be knowledgeable that the guy is actually complied or non-complied. For instance, where township regulations are concerned. Like, for instance, a guy just goes and takes a family home, demolishes a four-roomed house, the so-called, what Joe Slower used to call mesh box, for lack of words, demolish that, and then now build a double-story development there. Forgetting that, by the way, there has to be a compliance process that they have to follow, where this thing gets approved by the town planning division of the relevant municipality. The effect of that now on your investment is that you are likely to have got yourself into an illegal development. If your neighbors decide to say you are encroaching, we are no longer able to enjoy the view of the sun, I can't see my neighbors anymore. If they take you to task and the municipality decides that what you have done is actually illegal, they will have to ask you to demolish. And you can imagine that the loss that you would incur if you have to go all the way to demolishing. So that's a worst case scenario. But in an ideal case scenario, you find that the guys definitely went ahead and sorted all the compliance issues that needed to be done with. Then from there on, when we do the valuation of that, now we are looking at the rentability of that property. That's in terms of the method of valuation, it's called the income capitalization method. How much generate the income can you generate from that property as well? So you are likely to find that in the valuation report, we advise you that this thing that you are looking to get yourself into is got good prospects of value, or run and never look back, or give it some thought. There's still things that you can do. Like, for instance, some municipalities are generous. They'll say to you, okay, fine, we know you developed illegally, but come, let's have a conversation. One of the crimes that will be asking you to have is you now tasking a proper architect to put your plans on scale, submit them for approval. Then from there on, even the banks now can come in and help you to lend on that property as collateral. But other than that, should you go ahead and develop without able to comply, you are going to face problems. But now, from a valuation point of view, we are able to advise you and say, look, it looks like you did it, but you didn't quite go about it the right way. So maybe go ahead with the conversation with the municipality to ensure that all is in order before you can go anywhere. Because remember, there's no bank that is going to lend you money on any legal structure. That cannot happen.
And I think that's one of the things that some I'll say some property entrepreneurs don't quite, see. A lot of them almost focus on the cash flow of having those rooms built up, but probably aren't looking at the various ways you can maximize having the asset, perhaps refinancing. So if you're able to, buy the property, build cash, there are various ways that you can then leverage off the asset and borrow money from the bank. But as you rightfully, point out, you won't be able to do that in the event where it's an illegal structure, because the bank certainly will inquire about whether or not the plans are they in place, and the structure is a legal structure. We are this evening in conversation with Kgoshi Sasa, who's the CEO of Mogalakwena Valuers, and we're looking at the value of evaluation and what essentially goes into evaluation. I think this is particularly useful for property investors who are looking to find various opportunities, and I'll ask Kgoshi this one, because one of the things that I like is being in touch with valuers themselves, because they get to value all kinds of property in different nodes, and there are various things that they're able to pick up. And I think one of the great things, you're able to see certain trends, certainly as valuers, that you and I at home probably aren't able to pick up. So if you've got any questions and comments on this one, do send them through. Of course, we also want to look at, if you are buying a residential property, why should you get it valued? So it could be a freestanding house. What are some of the things that evaluation would typically pick up in the event that you do that? And as we take your questions and comments, we've got a question here coming through from YouTube asking, how long does it take to do such an evaluation ordinarily? So how long is a typical valuation for a residential property, Kgoshi?
If we're doing it for banks, not a very popular answer, but unfortunately, we are only given literally eight working hours to finish evaluation report for a bank.
Yeah.
But if we're doing it for you as a private buyer, and you want us to really go as comprehensive as possible, we are likely to take about 3 to 5 working days. Because remember, with the banks, there is a template that they provide. They are only looking for certain things within evaluation. So once those are there, they are comfortable to take the risk and fund it. But if we are doing it for you as a private buyer, I would advise to you to say, let the guy do what they need to do until they get it right, so that there is value add for you as well. Because, you're not a bank. A bank is likely to take as more risk as possible.
We've got a comment coming through from Facebook. This one is coming from George Ramabva, who says, it's Ramuba, sorry, who says the highest and the best use of rental flats may also be sectional title in a long run, provided all the legalities have been complied with, of course. And that's I absolutely agree, George. And I think so many, people, when they start off with their developments, don't think that long term. So perhaps in the beginning, you may just have a cash flow strategy. Perhaps you've got 8 units, but if all the legalities are in place, you're able to further down the line, sectionalize those 8 units. Perhaps you only sell off 2 of them because you want to open up a bit more equity, because there's another deal you want to finance, and you keep the other 6 in your books and you continue renting them out because the returns are good. So that's certainly an important thing to look at if you're looking at developing, and understanding why it's so important to get the right things right the first time. So whether it's, the valuation, as Kgoshi has pointed out, but also all the legal checks, working with the right architects. So even as you are building your development, don't cut corners. Kgoshi, I don't know if you've seen this one when you do evaluations, but what I found is with certain, property investors or property entrepreneurs, especially working in the township or in some of the emerging, I'll say property spaces, they cut quite a lot of corners when they build, in ways where further down the line, you almost cannot sell that. It's almost impossible to sell that asset because of the way they've built and cut various corners in the actual construction of that property.
Yeah, there's a lot of, we come across that quite a lot. Other things that people tend to ignore is the issue of bulk services. Like, for instance, you go all out and ensure that you are putting up a very well-built, well-looking, very beautiful building there, but you are forgetting one thing. there is that guy called ESCOM now. Are you sure that the area that you are developing your development is being allocated the right amount of power that you require? Because you can't in 2021 just go ahead and develop without having to consult your relevant authorities and also ESCOM as well, your energy department, to say, guys, this is the idea that I have. Will I have sufficient power and water for me to be able to house my bid your tenants or bid your buyers if you are going to sectionalize? That is a very important conversation that you need to have. And the other thing as well is where you mostly get guys cutting corners in terms of the finishing, the actual construction is people try and go as cheap as possible building material to a point that you end up now actually robbing yourself, because you are putting a structure up that cannot be up like that for a certain number of years. The effective age of the building gets to be shortened because of whatever you would have done that was seen to be a way of you saying, I'm cutting costs. Rather go all out and do it correctly than do it correctly later on. It's going to cost you more.
And it always does. I share with, my viewers, Kgoshi, that there are certain mistakes that when you make them in the beginning, they have a way of costing you so much more money to fix them later on. So rather spend that little bit, early in the early days, perhaps it might be 10, 15% more than wait a few months or a few years later where you're going to find yourself spending significantly more trying to resolve it. Now, going back to more of your questions and comments, I love the questions that we're getting in. We've got a question here from, let's take this one from Facebook. This one is coming from Rose Ntswane, who's asking, does closing a swimming pool decrease the value of the house?
Not really. It depends on the reasons why you are doing that. Because what we find happening now, mostly in the so-called older townships, like suburbs, like your Gezinas of this world, and some extensions in Rustenburg and them, where you find an elderly couple, they don't need a swimming pool. The type of buyer that you find in that area is somebody who's close to retirement, but yet still active. They'll close a pool and they'll either put up a kiddies play area for their grandchildren, or even put up a garden there for growing of their small scale vegetables. So you can't necessarily come out and say having a swimming pool being closed up reduces the value of the property. There are cases where it actually enhances the value of the property, because remember, it also costs you more to run a swimming pool because of the cleaning chemicals, having a guy coming out and doing it if you are not able to do it yourself, refilling it if there is leakages. And there are people who will tell you straight that, you know what, I don't want a swimming pool. And that doesn't have to do much with the value of their property, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on where you're coming from.
More of your questions and comments at home. We've got a comment coming through from Facebook. Ubabalwa Wolf saying, invaluable platform, really appreciate this. Think it's also important as agents to educate the public and the community. I absolutely agree there, Babalwa. And we've got a question coming from YouTube. This is coming from Carol Kliane. And Carol, love this question. Carol's question is, what is the difference between the valuation done by the municipality in the rates and taxes statements and the valuation done independently? Love this question, because I know COJ had redone our valuations. I think it was 2 years ago. It caused quite the uproar. So, Kgoshi, what then is the difference between the municipal valuation and the ones that one would independently do?
The Municipal Rates Act says that municipalities have to determine market value, which is exactly what we do as well. But remember, with the municipality now, there are different things that you need to consider. Like, for instance, in larger municipalities like Johannesburg, you cannot expect that municipality will walk around inspecting each and every property in the municipality. So as a result, there are going to be systems that are utilized for them to determine value, like your KAMA systems, mass appraisals, and all that. So chances are that you as a landowner will come back and say, yeah, no, but my value is too high. But now, when we send the value out to come and determine the value, you actually find that you're actually undervalued. Because the poor municipal value was not given the opportunity to come and inspect the property. So, to answer you directly, they determine market value as well. So, the value in the valuation role has to be market value all the time.
And I see that question was actually from Umziwake George Kgoshi. Apologies for that. I think one of the big things with the municipal valuation is, of course, as homeowners, we wanted to be as low as possible so that we pay low rates and taxes. And if you then go out and get an independent valuation and you're able to get it valued slightly higher, able to refinance your property differently. So it really depends where on the property scale you typically are and what you want to take advantage of. There are always great ways to try and maneuver that one. And I'm going to stick with the municipal valuation because I see Rochelle Malone on Facebook has actually asked, I'll say a follow-up question relating to this. She's asked, can an owner dispute the municipality valuation and which is done by the aerial picture? Because they obviously didn't get access. So can one dispute the valuation?
Yes, you are allowed to. Every time a valuation roll is finalized, the municipality will open what they call an objection process. There is, like for instance, now in Eguruleni, the valuation roll has been submitted and there is an objection phase open now. If you are a resident of the Eguruleni municipality, you are allowed now to go check what your value is and come up with the reasons for factors that you deem fit for you to come out and say my value is too high or too low. By the way, having said on the valuation board, I've come to see people coming in and say, I'm sorry to come and say that but my value is too low. So it's not all the time that you find that the valuation from the owner seems to be on the high side, but most definitely, yes, you can go and object against the value that the municipality has determined. But you have to get your factors and your facts right. That's the reasons why you feel that is too high.
And I think, Kgoshi, I remember when it was happening at COJ and sort of the uproar that it caused, and a lot of people were complaining that, well, you don't even have access to our houses, and a lot of the complaints were that it's too high, and of course people were worried that their rates and taxes were going to go significantly high. COJ was quite open in communicating, I'd say, the process of lodging your objections to the valuation roll. And I found that a lot of people who did lodge those objections did actually have them slightly changed. Some of the valuations, they had made errors. I remember with one of my properties, they had, changed it from residential to business. And I think for nearly 4 months, suddenly, my rates almost quadrupled from paying residential rates to suddenly paying business one rates. And of course, had to go have that changed because it's an apartment in an apartment block and it's a residential block. Luckily enough, the majority of us in that building, COJ had somehow changed us from residential to commercial. So we were able to almost do a collective, case with COJ, and it was changed. So I think certainly do find out which municipality you're in and what the process in that respective municipality is in terms of changing that. We're getting more questions and comments on this issue, and I'm absolutely loving this one. I think one of the questions that I want us to look at is coming from Facebook. Ms. Mo Maide says, if I might deviate a little bit, does a qualified buyer certificate grant one to qualify for a bank home loan? Are the valuers able to give interested property buyers such certificate?
Yes, we are. Yeah. We conduct valuations for different purposes and for different parties as well. Even a private buyer, if you come out and say, I'm interested in property, so and so, you can task a valuer to go out and assist you in determining a value. By the time you submit it for financing purposes, you would probably know what the value is. But what you need to keep in mind is that the different banks lately, they've got a panel of valuers. You are likely to find that had you utilized me as Kgoshi to do a valuation for you, let's say bank X doesn't have me on their panel, they are likely to come back and say, no, we still feel that we need to send our own because he's familiar with our processes and our templates and not necessarily because they doubt my valuation. It's just that they need to have someone who has worked for them before, because that person will probably be able to do the tick sheet, for lack of words, better than I would.
We've got another comment. Well, there's actually a question here coming from Facebook. Ubongani Terence asking, what's your position on township residential property development and sectional titles in townships?
You know what? I support them fully. Like I said initially, I support them, but all I'm saying is that ensure that by the time you get to say, I'm going around, I'm going to do it, just ensure that all the legalities are taken care of. You have complied, your conveyances have gone, and also made sure that the title deed situation is taken care of. Because the last thing you want is to get yourself a 200,000 worth piece of land. You go and build 10 million development on it, only to find that you're actually not the owner of that land. And I would imagine that would be a very uncomfortable situation to find yourself in. So by talking about legalities, you're not talking about the municipality, you're talking about the whole value chain. Ensure that what you are developing firstly is yours. That's the first thing. Secondly, in terms of the compliance of the municipality, you are done. Like you said yourself, Zama, as well. Get the right people to do the plans for you, the right architect to help you to draw the plans, and ensure that your plans are also in compliance with the whatever regulations that are there. Once you get that in order, you can go ahead and develop. And I can tell you, the cream is very creamed up. The township.
There's a question that a number of people keep asking. I'm going to ask it last. I wanted to stay on the issue of, I'll say, township properties and township developments. There's a question coming from George again, saying there's currently been a mushroom of illegal structures in black townships recently. For example, people building more than the density allows in terms of town planning. But it's also seen that municipalities are losing the battle regarding the control of those structures. Poor people are building such rooms to make some income for their families. My question, Kgoshi, is what do you think is the future of those illegal developments as a valuer, and how do you advise property owners who are doing such structures?
Look, like we initially said, that there is twofold. If you are building it as an investment, you are clearly going the wrong way, because you cannot utilize that to get any form of collateral for anything, because you are building illegal. That's the first one. Second to that, now you are running a risk as well of developing. Like if you take Alexander as an example, there are too many illegal developments happening within the Alexander Township. But now, when it comes to us as valuers going out and determining a value for them, we are always seen to be killing deals, because you get there and you say to the bank, look, you can't finance something. Everything is illegal. The electrification is illegal. The structure itself is illegal. Even the density is illegal. The number of people living in one structure also doesn't make sense, because you find a development where someone went and did what they could because they could afford. Instead of having, say, four adults living in a particular development, there's probably about 10, 12. Already there, you're talking back to many things like park service and that also. So in terms of the future of that, for me, I would say, much as people are doing it and are getting away with it, but from a financier and from an investor point of view, it's a no-no.
And I think, Kgoshi, I think one of the big things is people usually, it goes to what's your property investment strategy. If you're always going to stay with cash flow, then perhaps you're going to, I want to say, okay with the illegal structure because it's providing the cash flow. You're never going to want to refinance or try to leverage off of that particular asset by tapping into financing from, a financial institution or even other investors for that case. And I think if you know that you're going to want to structure your portfolio slightly differently, perhaps look at the capital appreciation. We're even touching on perhaps sectionalizing it at a later stage. Then you need to do everything by the book, because you're not going to be able to, successfully sectionalize it if it wasn't done properly. We're getting quite a lot of questions and comments. Kgoshi, I can already tell you we're going to have to bring you back, but I want to ask this one. It's a question coming from YouTube. Manok saying, when you want to change your property from a house to a home business or commercial building, do you still have to get a property valuation?
Not really. The first process for you to that, you need to go to your township planning department, apply for rezoning, because now remember you are likely to be sitting on a property zone Res 1. Maybe you want to have a business 1 or a business 2 until to business 4. So first, you need to now talk to your municipality and check if indeed that can be allowed. Because remember, not every property can be rezoned for various reasons. the municipality can come and say, we as the municipality, in terms of our special planning, we don't foresee ourselves allowing any residential properties being changed from the res to flats, for instance, or changing them from res 1 to, for you to have a restaurant or have shops or whatever, have a shopping mall, whatever the case is. So yes, remember, as a valuer, we will determine a value for you irrespective of the type of use that you want to do on the property. But now, changing from a different type of use to another is a different process that involves the zoning change with the municipality.
And I think the big thing with that one, Kgoshi, as you're saying, I think when we look at how there's certain properties that can't be rezoned, that's why it's so important to read the title deed and see if there are any restrictions on the title deed, because that's when you'd be able to pick up if there are, any snags. So before you even go buy a piece of land, because sometimes you see a piece of land and you think, I want to develop here, or I want to buy this house and take it down and build X, Y, Z. Read the title deed, see if there are any restrictions, consult with an attorney if you're able to, overcome some of those restrictions. Some you are able to, some are borderline impossible and pretty much not worth the, your time and your effort. So do make sure that you do that. I'm going to squeeze in the last two questions. I know that we're running out of time and the farming podcast is going to be coming up. The one is coming from Ubiboni Mehwe on Facebook asking, are there any regulations around building in rural communities? A lot of people are investing serious properties in these communities. Is there any value to it?
The rural development one is a very interesting one. Some people call it the sentimental value because, one, do you own the land? The direct answer is no, because you are sitting on a permission to occupy that is issued by the local chief or the local owner. So first thing first, I wouldn't say it's a non-regulated market, but you are out of the demarcations of a certain municipality, meaning there's no title deed available. Even if you are to sell, you are selling among yourselves. It's not a legal, it's not a process where you come back and say, I build a house with 10 million, I've got a title deed for it that I can keep it for my kids. They can always use it as part of their wealth later. We are purely finding ourselves as people building in townships for our own accommodation and for our own family as well. There's not really much that you can do with it. And by the way, in terms of the requirements that you have to go through in building, there's not much.
Yeah. The last question, a number of people asked this one in different ways, but essentially the big thing was around the standard rate or cost for an independent valuer. I'll read out Tapelo Sankofa, one of the people who asked this question. He's saying, what is the standard rate or cost for an independent valuer? Is the value from the municipality free of charge? So from an independent valuer, what kinds of costs are we looking at? A number of people have actually asked that question. So I decided let's actually leave it for the very last part of the show.
Look, many months ago, the Council of Valuers published rates that one could charge for a valuation report, but they have not been updated for a very long time. In actual fact, they are not in use anymore. But I find that people who call us for services, some of them are mindful of that, and they always want to ask for a valuation basing it on that. But remember, that one takes into account the value of the property. So in terms of the fees that we charge, for instance, us as an agency, if we're doing a residential valuation, it can vary from anything from 1,000 rand to about 3,000 rand, depending on what are we valuing. And that will require how many man hours as well. But for commercial valuations, the fee will be slightly higher compared to residential because the amount of work required is a bit higher there. But look, I always say you can't put value on a valuation. Like the example that we gave when we started, where we said JPC now sees on a real estate asset worth over hundreds of millions after having paid only 5,000 to the valuer. So the question is your choice. Rather go out there, trust the valuer, negotiate your fee, get the valuer to come out and assist with the value. But at least you know the value add of that valuation report. Unlike you coming up now, only looking at the cost first before the actual value that the valuation adds. Because you may think, Kgoshi, come on, 10,000 is a lot. But I could be saving a billion rand.
Yeah, and I think, Kgoshi, that's actually a great place to leave it. As I said, we've been getting quite a number of comments and questions from our viewers, so we're definitely going to pick up this conversation again around valuation, and especially when we look at township areas, because I think this is where a lot of us see potential for ourselves and our families, as you've so rightfully pointed out, because for many you already have that asset. It might be the family that owns it, but it's there. You don't need to buy it. So I think understanding the different ways that we can play around with it and how we can also extract value from it becomes so important. So Kgoshi, thank you so much for joining us on the show. As usual, it's been a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Zama. See you soon.
And that is Kgoshi Sasa, who is the CEO at Mogalakwena Valuers. And that's it from Kgoshi and us, of course, on the Private Property Podcast. Before we take a quick break, because I know we usually take this quick break, before we announce who the potential winner of that 1,000 Rand cash prize, I'm going to say it before the break and give this person an opportunity to drop us a message down here below. Remember, yesterday we didn't get a winner, so it has rolled over to 1,000 Rand. It's the last 1,000 Rand. I hope that this person is watching, and the potential winner of that 1,000 Rand cash prize goes to Usthembeka Ndlovu. Usthembeka Ndlovu Makateni, I hope you're watching. If you are watching, we're going to go for a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to check from my colleague if Usthembeka Ndlovu is watching to claim that 1,000 Rand in cash. We'll be back just after this. Welcome back to episode 235 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Uzamantungwa Khumalo. That was an incredible episode talking valuations with Kgoshi Sasa. Definitely going to have him back on the show. I think so many of us need a better understanding of valuations, especially whether you're looking at, buying a residential property. And I'd even say, a freehold property is one that is very important for you to get that valuation. But before we talk about the episode, we are, of course, giving away that 1,000 Rand in cash to one lucky viewer. I'm waiting to hear from Uluyanda if Usthembeka Ndlovu is on the live and watching us. And in the event where she is, then she gets to walk away with that 1,000 Rand in cash. I feel like if there isn't somebody who's going to claim this amount, I might just, I'll see if I can ask the team to give it to me, to give to somebody on the show. I promise I won't pocket it myself. We'll definitely spread the love as much as possible. So Usthembeka Ndlovu, if you are on the live, drop us a message down here below. And Leander's confirmed that Usthembeka is unfortunately not with us this evening. So what I'm going to do, I'm banking this 1,000 Rands. I know that today is essentially the last day for the Sherlock Holmes, 1,000 Rand. Well, in this instance, is usually 500 Rands cash. What I'll probably do is tomorrow we'll see if we can actually add it to tomorrow's episode. So tomorrow, make sure that you are watching the show live. Not only will we give away this 1,000 Rand, and I'll find a creative way for us to give it away. So you have to be watching live. And if you are, then later on in the show, you can walk away with that 1,000 Rand. Tomorrow, we're also giving away that 5,000 Rand voucher. So if you haven't entered yet the Sherlock Holmes competition for the 12th week, make sure you go to our website and our social media platforms to read that riddle for week 12, and we'll be choosing that lucky winner. And we're also giving away the grand prize. And of course, that mystery grand prize that is no longer a mystery is the 30,000 Rand voucher. So there's going to be quite a lot of money that we give away tomorrow. I'll see if I'm in a festive and giving mood and add a little bit more as we round up the last day, essentially, of our Sherlock Holmes competition, which has been quite an interesting treasure hunt with you at home. Well, that's it from myself, Zamantungwa Khumalo, and the rest of the Private Property Property Podcast team, thank you very much for tuning in this evening. As it is a Thursday, award-winning farmer Umbali Noko will take you through to the farming podcast at 8 o'clock. Until then, hoping you're staying home and staying safe.